She woke up before dawn, the sky still dark and the air thick with quiet anticipation. Her hands moved automatically, reaching for the worn leather case on the table where her rifle lay nestled in soft foam. It was not the first time she had seen this familiar sight, but today felt different somehow. The small shooting range behind the old barn was still empty except for the faint rustling of leaves in the cool morning breeze. Her footsteps were steady as she made her way across the gravel, crunching beneath her boots. The weight of the rifle was reassuring in her arms, a familiar comfort that grounded her in a world that often seemed uncertain. She had been coming here for months now, ever since the day she had first picked up the rifle. It was supposed to be a simple routine, just replacing the targets hung on the stands, old paper silhouettes marked with fading bullet holes. She never imagined it would turn into anything more than that, a way to pass the time and clear her mind from the noise of everyday life. But something about the solitude, the focus required to steady her aim, had become a quiet refuge, a place where she could breathe and think clearly. The targets hung slightly askew and she adjusted them carefully, lining each one just right. Her fingers brushed over the rough edges as if connecting with the stories they held, the echoes of shots fired in practice, the silent challenge to improve. She stepped back, took a deep breath, and raised her rifle, aiming down the sights. Her eyes narrowed, focusing on the distant shapes, waiting patiently for her skill to test them. The sound of the rifle cracking through the stillness echoed sharply, sending a ripple of energy through the quiet morning. She lowered the weapon, checked her marks, and then replaced the targets again, ready to start the process all over. Suddenly, the crunch of footsteps approached from behind, breaking the calm. She turned to see a man walking towards her, his silhouette strong and confident, dressed in tactical gear that spoke of experience and discipline. He carried his own rifle casually slung over his shoulder, but his eyes held a weight that told stories of battles fought and won. Without a word, he stopped beside her and nodded a silent greeting. The moment felt charged like the air before a storm, something unspoken passing between them. Without hesitation, he reached into his bag and pulled out a rifle, handing it to her, the cold metal unfamiliar yet strangely inviting. His gaze held steady, waiting for her to take it, and the weight of the moment pressed down like a challenge. She looked at the weapon in her hands, a tool of precision and power, a symbol of trust and responsibility. She knew that accepting it would change everything, yet somehow she felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The man stepped aside, his posture relaxed yet vigilant, leaving the space open for her to take the lead. The quiet range no longer felt empty, but alive with possibility. Her heart quickened as she lifted the rifle, raising it to her shoulder. A new chapter had begun, one written not just in bullet holes, but in courage and unexpected connections. The morning's sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. As she steadied her breath and adjusted her stance, the rifle felt heavier now in her hands, not just a tool, but a promise that demanded focus and respect. She glanced toward the man who watched silently, a calm presence standing just beyond the line where the targets hung, fluttering slightly in the breeze. It was strange how someone so quiet could fill the space with such intensity, as if the air itself was charged with something unseen. She took aim and squeezed the trigger, the sharp crack of the rifle cutting through the stillness, sending a shiver down her spine. The bullet tore through the air, striking the target with a precise impact that made her heart leap. She lowered the rifle, feeling a surge of accomplishment mixed with something deeper, something she could not quite name. The man nodded approvingly, a faint smile touching his lips, but his eyes remained guarded, like they carried 1,000 untold stories. Silence stretched between them, a fragile thread woven with unspoken words. She wanted to ask who he was, what brought him here, but the questions felt too heavy to sudden. Instead, she focused on the rhythm of her breathing, the pulse in her veins, the way the rifle balanced perfectly against her shoulder. With each shot, her confidence grew, the barrier of doubt slowly crumbling like the worn paper targets at her feet. She could feel a shift inside her, a quiet awakening, as if this moment was unlocking something she never knew existed. The man stepped forward, breaking the silence, his voice low and steady. "You have a good eye," he said, as if stating a fact, not a compliment. His tone was rough, but not unkind, and it held a weight that made her sit up straighter. She nodded silently, unsure of what to say. But feeling a flicker of pride that warmed her chest, he reached into his pack, pulling out a small booklet worn at the edges, and handed it to her. The pages were filled with notes, drawings, diagrams of marksmanship and tactics. It was a glimpse into a world she had never known, a world where precision met purpose and every movement was calculated. The man watched her reaction carefully, as if gauging whether she was ready to step beyond the safety of the range and into something more. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of earth and pine and the distant hum of life awakening. She glanced down at the booklet, tracing the lines of ink with her finger, wondering if she was prepared to take the next step. She felt a mix of fear and excitement swirling inside her, a dance of uncertainty and hope that made her heart race. Without a word, she closed the booklet and looked up, meeting the man's steady gaze. Her eyes spoke the question she could not yet voice. Was this the beginning of a path she was meant to follow? The man gave a slight nod, a gesture of affirmation and trust that felt like an invitation to a secret world. Together they walked toward the edge of the range, where the trees stood tall and shadows deepened. The quiet was different here, filled with the promise of unknown challenges and unseen dangers. She felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with a cautious determination. The rifle was still in her hands, a constant reminder of the choice she had made and the journey she was beginning. The day stretched ahead, full of possibilities and questions waiting to be answered. She knew this was just the start, a chapter that would test her strength, courage, and resolve. But for now, she took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. With steady hands and an open hearth, forest welcomed them, with its ancient silence broken only by the soft crunch of leaves beneath their boots. She felt the cool shade wrap around her like a protective cloak as the man led the way deeper into the thicket. The rifle remained secure in her grip, a weight that reminded her of the responsibility she now carried. Every step forward was a step away from the safety of the familiar and into the unknown. Birds flitted through the branches above their heads, and the faint rustle of small creatures echoed in the underbrush. The air smelled of moss and damp earth, a scent that grounded her and made the world feel raw and alive. The man moved with quiet confidence, navigating the terrain with ease, as if he belonged to this wild place. She struggled to keep up, but found strength in the rhythm of the journey, her muscles aching, but her spirit unwavering. What felt like hours, they came to a clearing where the sunlight poured down in golden streams, illuminating the ground. The man stopped and gestured for her to set the rifle down carefully. She obeyed, feeling the sudden absence of the familiar weight strange and unsettling. The clearing was empty save for a few scattered stones and a large tree stump that seemed to call out for attention. The man began to speak, his voice low and deliberate, weaving stories of discipline and patience, the silent art of marksmanship, and the importance of trust, not just in the weapon, but in oneself. She listened intently, absorbing every word like a student eager for knowledge. Her mind raced with questions and possibilities, her heart beating faster with every new lesson showed her how to steady her breath, how to align her sight with purpose and calm. The process was slow, methodical, almost meditative, and she found herself drawn into the rhythm, losing track of time and space. The rifle was no longer just a tool, but an extension of her own will, a bridge between her fear and her courage. Suddenly, the man reached into his pack and pulled out a worn leather patch embroidered with a symbol that seemed both ancient and powerful. He handed it to her with a solemn look and said, "This is a mark of honor, a reminder that every shot carries meaning and consequence." Her fingers brushed over the fabric, the rough stitches like a promise etched into her skin. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, the clearing grew cooler and the shadows lengthened. She felt a profound sense of change, as if the world around her had shifted imperceptibly but irrevocably. The man's presence was a steady anchor, a reminder that she was not alone in this new journey. Motioned for her to pick up the rifle once more and take aim at a distant target barely visible through the trees. Her hands were steady now, her breath controlled, and her mind clear. The shot rang out sharp and true, cutting through the silence like a call to arms. She lowered the rifle and met the man's gaze, a silent exchange passing between them of trust, respect, and shared purpose. As day faded into evening and the forest began to hum with the sounds of night creatures stirring the path back to the range, was lit only by the faint glow of twilight, but she felt a lightness inside as if the weight of uncertainty had lifted. She walked beside the man not just as a student but as someone who had glimpsed a deeper truth. The night settled over the range like a velvet curtain, muffling the sounds of the world outside. She sat by the small campfire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on her face. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of everything that had happened. The weight of the rifle, the man's quiet strength, and the strange mix of fear and excitement that pulsed through her veins. She stared into the fire, searching for answers, and the glowing embers, as if they could reveal the path ahead. The man sat nearby, his silhouette outlined by the firelight, a steady presence in the darkness. He spoke softly, sharing stories of hardship, sacrifice, and the invisible battles fought within. The words were heavy with meaning, and she listened with a growing sense of connection. The world she had known felt distant, now replaced by something raw and real, something that demanded everything she had to give. Ish thought about the targets on the range, the empty paper shapes that had once seemed so simple. Now they were symbols of a deeper purpose, each one a challenge to push beyond her limits and find strength she never knew existed. The rifle was no longer just a tool for practice, but a key to unlocking parts of herself she had kept hidden away. Man pulled out a small worn journal from his pack and handed it to her. The pages were filled with notes, sketches, and reflections, a record of his own journey and the lessons learned along the way. She traced the words with her finger, feeling a strange kinship with the man whose life was etched in ink and experience. The journal was a bridge between their worlds, a silent promise that she was not alone. Outside, the fire crackled and the night air was cool against her skin. She realized how much she had been holding back, the doubts, the fears, the uncertainty that had kept her tethered to a safe but empty existence. Tonight those chains felt weaker, like they were beginning to crumble in the face of something bigger, something that called her forward. Man looked at her with eyes that seemed to see into her soul and said, "The path ahead will not be easy, but it is yours to walk. With every step you take, you grow stronger, more certain, more alive." She nodded slowly, understanding that this was not just about marksmanship or rifles, but about finding courage in the face of the unknown, about trusting herself when everything else was uncertain. Firelight flickered, casting long shadows as they sat in companionable silence. The forest around them was alive with the sounds of night creatures, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl. The world was vast and mysterious, and for the first time she felt a part of something greater, a journey that was hers to claim. As the fire died down and the stars began to twinkle overhead, she lay back on the cool earth, feeling the vast sky stretch endlessly above her. The rifle was resting nearby, a constant reminder of the choice she had made and the path she was on. She closed her eyes and let the night wash over her, surrendering to the unknown with an open heart, ready for whatever the dawn might bring. The first light of dawn crept slowly over the horizon, spilling pale gold across the quiet range. She woke with a start, the cool morning air brushing against her skin and the distant call of birds stirring the world awake. The night had left her feeling different, somehow lighter, as if the weight she had carried for so long had begun to lift. She sat up slowly, reaching for her rifle, the familiar weight, a comfort and a challenge all at once. Man was already awake, moving quietly about the camp, packing his gear with practiced efficiency. He glanced over and nodded, a silent greeting that carried more meaning than words. She returned the nod, feeling a renewed sense of purpose growing inside her like a spark ready to ignite. She knew today would be different, a day that would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. They walked toward the range together, the morning mist curling around their feet like ghostly tendrils. The targets stood waiting, patient and silent reminders of the task ahead. Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and nerves as she prepared to face them once more. The man spoke softly, breaking the stillness, "You have come far, but the real journey begins now." She looked at him, searching his eyes for clues about what that meant, but found only steady resolve. She lifted the rifle carefully, taking her position, the world narrowing to the sight, the target, and her steady breath. Each shot was deliberate, precise, a dance between control and instinct. The air seemed charged with electricity, as if the very act of firing carried a weight beyond the bullet itself. With every hit, Her confidence soared, and the barriers of doubt crumbled further, revealing a strength she had never known. Suddenly, the man called out, moving closer to the targets. He began to rearrange them, this time placing them at varying distances and angles. Challenging her to adapt and think quickly, her mind raced as she adjusted her aim, learning to trust not just her eyes but her instincts. The rhythm of the shots became faster, more fluid, a conversation between her and the rifle, a silent language of trust and determination. Hers passed like this, the sun climbing higher and the sweat dripping down her brow, but she did not falter, her focus unbroken, her spirit unwavering. The man watched silently, offering occasional guidance but letting her find her own way. Each moment was a lesson, a step closer to something greater than herself. As the day waned, the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of pink and orange. She lowered the rifle, feeling exhausted yet exhilarated. The man approached, handing her a water bottle with a rare smile breaking through his usual stoicism. "You have done well," he said, simple words that felt like a crown of victory. She drank deeply, feeling the cool water soothe her parched throat. The ache in her muscles was a reminder of the journey she had undertaken and the challenges still ahead. Yet in that moment she felt unstoppable, ready to face whatever came next. With steady hands and an open heart, they packed up their gear and began the walk back through the fading light, the world around them quiet except for the soft sounds of their footsteps and the rustling leaves. She glanced at the man, knowing that this partnership was more than just training. It was a bond forged in trust, courage, and shared purpose. The rifle was slung across her back, a symbol of transformation and promise. She felt a fierce determination burning inside, a desire to keep moving forward, to keep growing, to keep fighting for something that mattered deeply. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, the night awaited them like an old friend full of secrets and possibilities. She knew the road would be long and difficult, but for the first time she welcomed the journey, embracing the unknown with courage, resilience, and peace. Night wrapped around them like a dark blanket, dotted with countless stars, each one a silent witness to the journey she had undertaken. Her steps were steady despite the weariness that tugged at her muscles and the ache in her bones. The rifle on her back was no longer just a tool, but a symbol of the strength and resolve she had discovered within herself. She thought back to the first day when she had come to the range, replacing targets, with no idea that her life was about to change forever. The quiet moments, the sharp crack of gunfire, the lessons shared in the forest, all had woven together into a tapestry of transformation, a journey not just of skill but of courage, trust, and the power to face the unknown. The man walked beside her, his presence a constant reassurance, a reminder that she was not alone on this path. His eyes held a quiet pride that spoke of respect earned through hard work and determination. She met his gaze and nodded silently, understanding that this was more than training. It was a partnership built on shared values and unspoken promises. They reached the edge of the range. The first light of dawn began to break, casting soft hues across the horizon. She paused, taking a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs and steady her racing heart. This moment was different, no longer a beginning but a continuation, a step forward into a future she was ready to face. She reached for the rifle, feeling its familiar weight settle in her hands, a grounding force that connected her to everything she had learned, everything she had become. The man stepped back, giving her space, the unspoken signal that she was ready to lead. Taking aim, she steadied her breath, closed one eye, and focused on the target far beyond the trees. The shot rang out clear and true, cutting through the morning air like a declaration of her newfound strength. She lowered the rifle and smiled, a smile that carried the weight of every challenge overcome, every fear faced, and every step taken toward becoming who she was meant to be. The man approached and placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of encouragement and respect. The journey was far from over, but in that moment she knew she had crossed a threshold, a transformation, not just in skill but in spirit, a readiness to face whatever lay ahead. With courage and gratitude, they walked away from the range into the light of a new day, the rifle carried with care and honor, a reminder of the path traveled and the road yet to come. Her heart was open, her mind clear, and her spirit unbreakable. The world awaited, and she was ready to meet it head-on with steady hands and an unshakable will. Story was no longer just about replacing targets or learning to shoot. It was about finding strength in unexpected places, about trusting oneself, about embracing the unknown and stepping boldly into the future. Whatever challenges awaited, she knew she was ready because she had discovered something far greater than skill alone. She had found her own power, and so the chapter closed on this part of the journey, but the story was just beginning, filled with promise, courage, and the endless possibility of what she could